So we all know the Strait of Hormuz is not going to be open anytime soon. And it's really starting to affect all of us, even if you don't drive. And flights around the world, including Canada, are starting to go up. I know this for a fact because I'm starting to look at prices to come back home for a visit. But in this video, I'm going to talk about a report, and it tells us what we should expect when it comes to airfare, but also what to expect at the pump. Because we're going into spring now, and apparently they use a different blend. I don't know much about this. Also, I have another topic to talk about, and I did touch base on this when I did a live stream yesterday with Josh from the Enemy From Within. But I did briefly bring up the topic of how South Asia and Southeast Asia are handling the current situation. But I did find a France 24 report that explains it much better than I can, so I'm going to show that to everybody as well. So let's get started with the first report out of Canada.
At Trudeau Airport, travelers are walking a fine line between spending time on vacation and spending on tickets.
This can be expensive, we realize that, but person's got to do what a person's got to do, right? You want to get somewhere, you got to go.
Now, I can relate to this. Like I said earlier, I'm trying to plan my trip home to Vancouver, maybe in May or June, just to visit my friends and family, and maybe have some A&W like Buddy Burgers. But unfortunately, if I want to go, I'm going to have to pay a higher price. But I think ticket prices right now, it's probably about anywhere between $300 or $400 higher than what is normal. And I have to times that by two because my wife is coming as well. But if you ask me, this trickle-down effect has just started. I mean, mine is a personal travel. I mean, I don't have to go back, but I do want to see my friends and family. But if you're traveling for business, obviously that's going to cost the business more. And if this business is selling products, I'm assuming they're going to be selling the products for a little bit more as well. I mentioned in a previous video that now might actually not be a good time to travel. But if you are going to travel, you might want to book those tickets pretty quickly. I realize I really should be listening to my own advice.
The escalation of attacks around vital shipping channels in the Strait of Hormuz comes with a rise in the cost of gas and jet fuel.
You had, 40, 50 cent increases in liters. Gas for automobile, the price of aviation fuel has doubled.
On certain tickets, Porter Airlines has already put in a fuel surcharge of $40. Telling CTV fuel represents the highest cost of airline operations, and the charge is, quote, expected to be temporary.
They always have a habit of kind of rolling into the regular fare somehow, some way. It's very rare I've seen those fuel surcharges really, disappear.
Now here's a question. Do you think the airlines are actually going to reduce the surcharge? I don't think so. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Some travelers with short hops say next time they'll drive.
But I have an hybrid.
But it's not much better on the ground. Around Montreal Sunday afternoon, prices were already at $1.93.
This is the week. Get prepared because we're probably going to go over the $2 liter mark in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Now I'm actually curious and interested to hear from the viewers. Have you had to make any changes because of these gas prices? When I was living in Vancouver, I didn't have to drive too much because I used to be able to walk to work. But I do have friends that are coming in from the Fraser Valley into downtown, and they are definitely saying that the gas prices are hurting their wallets. But unfortunately, the entire world is going to have to suffer through this now, and we all know who is to blame.
If you think prices are bad now, well, just wait. On April 15th, stations across Canada will switch from a winter to a summer blend, which means it'll cost even more.
As the components used in the summer blend are a little bit more sophisticated, more costly. So for $2 next week, in 2 weeks, we get $2.10 if nothing else changes.
After Porter's fuel surcharge, Dan McTagg expects other Canadian carriers to follow suit. He says the best time to book your summer vacation was 2 months ago. And if you didn't,
Staying at home or hitchhiking seems to be the best option as we head into summer 2026.
your best travel advice might be to get a new pair of shoes.
Why does the news always have to have some sort of cheesy ending to every story? Anyways, I don't think this situation that the globe is in right now is going to change anytime soon. And that Strait of Hormuz, I don't see it being open for the foreseeable future. I could be wrong, and I hope I am wrong. But while the gas prices in Canada is rising and people are starting to feel it, Canadians haven't had to make drastic changes to their daily life because other countries around the world have had to make these changes. And I'm going to show you some of the changes that countries in South Asia as well as Southeast Asia have had to make. Now, before I get to the next report, I would like to thank Tanya for sending in another photo, and this time is a photo west of Sundre of a few wild horses in the foothills of the Rockies. I actually have a little bit of fun trying to figure out where to place the co-host in each one of these backgrounds. So thank you, Tanya, for sending another photo. Now, this next report comes out of France 24, and it talks about how the Middle East conflict is actually affecting the area that I'm in right now. Thankfully, Malaysia hasn't been affected yet, and I do say yet. But unfortunately, there's some of the neighboring countries around me that are going through a bit of a rough time when it comes to adapting to what's going on right now. So let's get started on this report.
Well, the war in Iran is certainly having an effect on markets around the world, and we're going to take a closer look at the situation now in Asia with Rochelle Ferguson-Buyahi, who joins me on the set. Rochelle, how has the war in the Middle East become an economic crisis for Asia?
Well, good question. I mean, some Asian countries over 7,000 kilometres away, but it's clear that the impact is being felt there a great deal. I'd like to kick off, if you will, Jeannie, with some figures that I find interesting. Let's think back to 2025. 20 million barrels per day of crude oil then and oil products, or that's roughly a quarter of the world's seaborne oil trade passing through the Strait. 80% of those shipments then were destined for Asia. That's according to the International Energy Agency. 90% then of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, exported through the Strait. So a huge dependency, if you will, from the Asian continent when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz.
Now you can see here, Asia is heavily dependent on the Strait of Hormuz. And much of the world's economy is dependent on Asia when it comes to manufacturing. I know there's not a lot of local news in Canada that talks about this. I mean, you might get a few segments here and there. But if you ask me, this is actually a pretty big deal. Because what I'm seeing right now from other neighboring countries, I mean, I do have work colleagues that I do chat with. They're having to ration the amount of energy, the amount of gas, and everything that they're using. And the worst thing of all, one of my colleagues said, is that he's not allowed to use his aircon. And when you're living in a region where I am, the aircon is like your best friend. But I tell this to everybody because some of these countries in South Asia and Southeast Asia, they may not be as prepared as the Western countries like Canada, or have as much oil reserves as we do. Now, look, I'm not an expert at this stuff. I mean, Bill Kelly and Klaus Kellerman, they can probably explain this a lot better. But what I do know is that as time goes by, and the longer the Strait of Hormuz is closed, what is happening in Asia right now is going to spill over to the rest of the world.
So you see that the dependency is huge. These are high-consuming Asian nations. So whether you're looking at kind of heating, or if you're looking at air conditioning, or if you're looking at, how electricity is used in homes, appliances, lights, these are generally, of course, electricity, but also fossil fuels, looking at oil, looking at your gas. This is one of the reasons, this clear dependency that this crisis has carved out, but has also shone the spotlight on when it comes to the link, if you will, between Asia and the Strait of Hormuz.
Air conditions, we definitely need them out here. And to be honest, if Malaysia put a mandate that we can't use air cons anymore, GTL is not going to be very happy. Probably a little bit more grumpy in his videos. But I am appreciative that Malaysia has taken some measures to make sure that we can continue, at least for now. Because like I said, as long as that Strait of Hormuz is closed, it's not good for anybody. Now, the reporter goes country by country in terms of how they are affected. Let's take a look.
And a reminder for our viewers, the impact has been immediate in several nations. Think of Thailand and Vietnam, where they have ordered public sector workers essentially to stay home to prevent them using oil or fuel, I should say, to get to work. The Philippines are also taking note there, imposing a 4-day government work week. Again, they say that's aimed at cutting electricity consumption and saving kind of 20% at a time when they are particularly energy short. You'll see in other nations, universities have been closed. Students have been asked to study online, again, as a way to conserve those supplies. Fishermen and farmers are another group, if you will, the agricultural sector, that say that they are really struggling from high fuel costs. They can't import, they cannot, transport their products. So that is really hitting them hard. So you have food that's been impacted, our food sector, transportation, as we said. A number of countries, it has to be said, Jeannie, have put fuel subsidies into place. But given the length already of this conflict in the Middle East, fuel subsidies, a lot of consumers are saying, are simply not enough. 1 or 2 days of a fuel subsidy isn't going to remedy the situation. That, of course, gives rise to people using fuel on the black market again, which is also a concern for a number of governments. So this is really hitting Asia hard. I'll just wrap up by saying financial markets, stocks, bonds, investments, they are what will be hit next if, of course, this crisis persists.
So you can clearly see the impact of the Strait of Hormuz being closed and what it's doing to Asia right now. But it doesn't mean that North America and Europe are immune to this. I just personally feel it might be a little bit delayed. So I think everybody back home in Canada, yes, gas prices are going up. You got to be prepared for other stuff that might happen as well. All right, that's all I got for today's video. Hopefully everybody got an update on what's happening around the world. If you found any value in anything I said today, or you want to hear more from a Canadian and international perspective without the US media bias, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. That way you're notified of my future videos. And if you want to see more of my videos, and you want to hear the cat, oh, the cat has not been here today. She's sleeping. I actually don't know where she is. But anyways, if you want to see more of my videos, check out the ones that are going to show up on your screen shortly. Thanks, everyone. I'll catch you in the next one.